What's up? I watched 31 movies in April, and I'm about to talk about all of them. To preface, these are my own thoughts and opinions, and there will be spoilers for everything I talk about, obviously. Also, this video is incredibly late, and to that I apologize dearly, but with all that said, it's movie time. Starting off this month with an absolute banger, this movie is jam-packed with some super funny shit, along with some real heart and soul. I could watch the first few minutes of this movie over and over. It's a fantastic transition from the first one, set to Accidentally in Love, fucking incredible song, and essentially lays the groundwork for the entire movie, providing enough exposition to where you don't even need to have seen the first one while not shoving it down the audience's throats. The rest of the film continues the exact same way as the opening, forcing the corners of my mouth muscles to shoot upwards. Just like the first one, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is the most original movie structure I've ever seen, but the fact that it tells its story through this fairy tale inspired lens with all these fantastical characters makes for such a truly original idea overall. I love the introduction of Puss and his chemistry with Shrek and Donkey. They make such a lovable team. Prince Charming and Fairy Godmother aren't incredible villains, but they are hateable as f*** and do the job fine. The time watching this film absolutely flew by like it was nothing. I really wish movies were closer to 90 minutes. Obviously there are some exceptions, but a lot of movies nowadays add this 30 minutes to an hour that just doesn't need to exist. Shrek 2 is a solid 9 out of 10 movie, and easily the best of the Shrek films. This is another great kids movie. I might be a little biased with my affinity for Lego, but these are just my opinions after all. The jokes are again funny as hell, and they don't rely on farting or shitting for laughs, which unfortunately has to be a kids movie standard in this day and age. Not only is this a good kids movie, like I previously mentioned, but it's also a good Batman movie. Hell, it's just a good ass fucking movie, but I think the Batman story told here is really captivating. Sure, it's a really goofy version of all these characters, and we couldn't have had this movie without every previous iteration of Batman, but I think that works to its advantage. I love how every central character has an arc and changes drastically from their ways at the beginning of the film, especially Batman himself. The Phantom Zone stuff was honestly dope as hell. I love seeing these random characters across a bunch of titles come together in that wacky climax to cause a shit ton of chaos. Also, I've got to be one of very few people to get this tiny reference. Very rewatchable movie, 8 out of 10. I really don't have all that much to say about this. What in the actual hell happened between this and the previous 3? Well, I can tell you, they took a huge steaming gorilla shit on all of it. I truly don't know what the goal of this movie is. Whatever it was, it failed. I just remember thinking, what the hell am I watching the entire final act of the movie? Mechagodzilla was neat, but Godzilla and Kong's fight at the end was the visual equivalent to white noise. I felt like nothing was happening. Genuinely, some of those shots made it seem like those two were just little kids playing in a sandbox. They lost all that epic sense of scale that was captured so wonderfully in Godzilla 2014 and Skull Island. I honestly don't remember much else about this one other than I hated the human characters so much. And yes, I know people don't go to these movies to see the human characters, but it takes up more than 50% of the fucking runtime, so it's a valid criticism. I'll say the CGI wasn't awful. In fact, I thought it was really good for the most part, but that's one of few redeeming qualities. 4 out of 10. Alright, hear me out. Instead of monkey fighting lizard, let's have a monkey and a lizard team up to fight another fucking monkey and a fucking lizard. What a great idea. That might be a little harsh, but watching this movie felt eerily similar to the last one. Human characters are still super fucking annoying. Look, I like Brian Tyree Henry, don't get me wrong, but his role in this movie is literally just to shout random nonsense that I guess is supposed to be funny. I mean, he doesn't actually do anything the entire movie besides make me want to stop watching. The other humans aren't much better either. Gia does something, I guess, but I dare you to tell me what in the holy helling fuck she actually did. No, seriously, I have absolutely no idea. I liked going into Hollow Earth in this one. It was easily the most interesting part of the last one, and I'm glad we explored it more here. So I guess 6 out of 10, I don't f***ing know. Wow, I was not expecting that. This actually turned out to be a really enjoyable movie. These characters felt extremely real and genuine, which can be attributed to not only the acting, but the writing as well. It sucks when a well-acted movie has shitty ass writing, but that wasn't the case here. I felt the same rush and panic that these characters did, which sucked me right into the story. I couldn't get enough of the fast-paced editing and upbeat look to the film, and I seriously went into this expecting it to be shit. I hadn't seen a single trailer or read anything about it before watching. I saw that it played at my theater for a few days and thought, why the hell not? This was a fun movie that I found extremely entertaining for the time I spent with it. 8 out of 10. I talked about a movie called Jungle Bunch Operation Meltdown in my February video, which I strangely found kind of enjoyable even though it was absolutely awful. This Epic Tales, this was made by the same dude, so I thought, hey, it might be a similar situation. My rotting corpse because I was dead wrong. This is one of the absolute worst movies I've seen all year, and I'm shocked I even made it out of the movie without committing horrible acts. I cannot express to you how incredibly much I loathed this piece of movie. It was released a while ago internationally, but it just made its way to the States with an English dub, and let me tell you, I wish it hadn't crossed the border. I actually hated every single second of that shit, and so did my party of 4. I'm not typically quite this harsh on movies, but I just felt like such shit afterwards that I thought this deserves nothing higher than a 2 out of 10. I had been meaning to watch this movie for a long ass time, and to be honest, I didn't think it was as good as so many people claim it is, but I still really enjoyed certain parts. It ain't the most action-y movie I've ever seen, and neither is 2049, but that's totally okay, just not what I was expecting. The set design and world building is the clear standout here, like it's beautiful with those wide cityscape shots that are insanely good looking. Harrison Ford is his usual badass self, demolishing his role. I really like how bizarre this dystopian world is in every way, and I can see how this film inspired so much of pop culture. Other than that, it was really slow and I didn't care all that much about the characters. 7 out of 10 for me. I definitely liked this one more than the first one, but I still feel like most people like this one more than I did. Villeneuve's work here is absolutely incredible. He is one of few directors that I can instantly tell who directed it just by watching the film. So many of these shots look like they could have been pulled straight out of Dune. And I know this came out first, but I saw those two after, whatever. I'm just saying he's got a style, and a good one at that. Ryan Gosling was awesome, and so was Harrison Ford for his time in the movie. I thought he would have been in it far more than he was, but oh well. 2049 really took what worked so well in the first film and did it all in the modern age with more technology, money, etc. I will admit that I fell asleep multiple times while watching, and of course I went back to continue where I left off, but it really takes its f***ing time with everything. I know I will enjoy this movie more upon a rewatch and a little more sleep in me, but for now, 8 out of 10. My whole English class read this story and watched the film, so that's really the only reason it's on here. I definitely wouldn't have watched this in any other circumstance. That being said, it wasn't awful. There are a shit ton of movies way f***ing worse on this list. The movie was far better than the book, however that is coming from someone who isn't the biggest fan of reading. I just genuinely thought the movie corrected some of the book's mistakes. The story is also a comical piece written in 1895, so many of the references are dated as hell, but this 2002 adaptation managed to still make some of that ancient humor actually funny. Wasn't shit, wasn't great, 6 out of 10. Adam Sandler is really hit or miss for me, but this was definitely a hit. This is one of his best movies. Not as good as The Wedding Singer, but a really heartfelt film. I love rom-coms, so I may rate a few of these films very differently to most others, but I don't care. This movie was a heap of fun. It had me laughing my balls off multiple times, which doesn't happen incredibly often for me. Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler just have such a chemical bond with each other that I seriously can't get enough of. I didn't really know anything about it before I started watching the film, but it blew my expectations out of the water. It was shocking to see that Barrymore's memory loss doesn't resolve itself by the end of the film, but they find a way to make it work every morning when she wakes up. Great film, 8 out of 10. I was watching some YouTube video about this movie, got halfway through it, and thought, why don't I just watch it? Fuck me, man. This film sucks fat ass. Like, how in the shit did anyone think it was okay to make any of this? I really couldn't find very many things in its runtime that were even okay. This movie is the definition of shitballs, and if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I want to make this very clear. Do not watch. You will regret it. The songs, all shit. Characters, shit. And that little annoying piece of shit. I wanted to rip my ears off every time he opened his fat f***ing mouth. I felt nothing watching this besides hatred. It was the most bland, boring, AI-generated, soulless piece of shit I've seen in quite some time. 3 out of 10, but damn, it was close to a 2. Fuck yeah, this movie ruled. I love Dev Patel's directorial debut, and I will be watching whatever else he puts out. I've heard this movie compared to John Wick more times than I can count, but I truly liked this one more than the first Wick movie. It felt like it had a lot of the same style of action, gunfights, and hand-to-hand combat, which by the way was absolutely insanely good, but it just had some more heart to it. And I say that about a story where the protagonist never says his real name, but I feel like he's far more relatable of a character than Wick, regardless. The cinematography made me feel like I was right in the middle of every single beautifully executed action scene. That especially goes for the fight near the end, with tons of people running at our main character from every direction. The ending was great and perfectly wraps up the protagonist's story, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't want him to survive. Story-wise, he should have died, yeah, but still. Anyways, dope as movie and definitely deserves a rewatch. 8 out of 10. Holy f***ing dude, what? This movie is awesome with a capital Every single letter. I remember watching this a few years back, but I fell asleep and never got around to finishing it. F*** my bitch ass, because I missed out. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. Every scene looks like weeks of effort went into its construction. Months even. One of the first f***ing scenes involves Baby going to grab some coffee for his crew. To most other movies, this is just some boring ass scene no one gives a f*** about. To this movie, it's an intricately crafted, multiple minute, unbroken long take with a song in the background set perfectly to each and every action. And that's not even to mention when the words to the song appear in the shot as parts of the city. The style of this film is breathtaking. It may not be for everyone, totally understood, but it is for me, and that's why I rated it so high. Baby is a f***ing badass while also managing to make you undeniably sympathetic for him and Deborah. Oh yeah, and disguised in this action-heavy, fast-paced thriller is a beautiful romance that spreads its wings gloriously by the end. Dude, and that ending was perfect. I could go on and on. All of the actors brought everything they had to their roles, and honestly, so did the entire crew. Effort f***ing shows. I pray another movie even close to this jaw-dropping work of art will come out sometime soon because I really need it right now. I spent a long time thinking about whether I'd settle with a 9 or a 10, and eventually decided on a 10 out of 10. Instantly became one of my favorite movies. I am being spoiled with these incredible movies. This shit was even better than the first John Wick. Damn, man, why did I wait so long to watch all these incredible films? I had actually seen this one before, but it had been a while and I paid way more attention this time around. I really can't find that many things to say that are different from my points about the first one in last month's video, other than it just did all that shit even better. The action scenes were longer and more intense. The gunshots felt even more impactful. John Wick was even more of a fucking badass. I was never bored, and I'm sure you can understand why. I like how Ian McShane got a much bigger role in the sequel. He makes for a great character. Also, that scene at the end where he and Wick are talking in that place with the fountain in New York, I don't know the name, but here's a picture. Anyways, all the people around them just stop and stare at the two of them, and this shit is menacing as hell. Perfect ending and sets up Parabellum wonderfully. 9 out of 10. These movies are funny as hell. I knew they would be, and I'm really glad I finally got around to seeing them when I did. That first one is an absolute comedy classic in my books, but it manages to be even more than that. I really do care for the characters, and I love seeing them bond over time despite their increasing hatred towards one another across all 3 parts. It's just a fun trilogy of movies that really allows these actors and writers to go nuts with some super out-of-pocket type shit. At first, I really didn't think Ken Jeong is all that funny in his role, but he grew on me over time and over the next few installments. Figuring out this ridiculous mystery as we go along is a great adventure, and it's what makes these so memorable. The second and third are definitely not as good as the first, but they aren't too far off. As of the start of both, I thought I was in for a shitfest, but by the end, I had a great time. The obvious complaint about these movies are that they're all the same premise, but I watched these back to back and I never once found it boring. I mean, yeah, it's a little repetitive at times, but the jokes always make me laugh. Bradley Cooper, Ed Helms, and Zach Galifianakis are all incredibly hilarious, but that wasn't too much of a surprise. Part 1 is a surprising 8 out of 10, and the other 2 can have a 7 out of 10 each. You know, I really thought this movie would be shit. And well, I was right because it was shit. Rarely do I think Sydney Sweeney is a good actress, but it was brutal here. She wasn't the worst part though, I'll admit. That falls hard on the writing. The story is just boring and predictable as f***. It's not groundbreaking to say that horror movies nowadays are pretty lackluster, but that was especially evident here. I watched this movie about a month ago as of recording this, but it feels like it's been a year. I honestly remember so very little about it, which could be partially blamed on my own disinterest, but I would argue that my disinterest was based on the movie's lack of interesting aspects. 4 out of 10. This movie was viewed to pass a bit of time, but believe me when I tell you that it felt like it made the time go by 10 times slower. My friends and I were checking the time through the film every f***ing 5 minutes. There are 3 or 4 funny things about this movie, but that is seriously it. I cannot express how unfunny Adam Sandler is in either of his 2 roles, which usually isn't the case. Like I said, I'm of the belief that Sandler is very hit or miss. Movies like The Wedding Singer and 50 First Dates are great. They're genuinely really well-crafted stories with interesting, captivating love stories to go alongside them. This was a shittily crafted story with a shitty, ridiculous love story. As of right now, this movie has a 3% on Rotten Tomato, and I don't always agree with that website, but it's pretty easy to see how it got that score here. 3 out of 10. Well, I watched Shrek 2 again, this time in the theater for the 20th anniversary re-release, and my thoughts are mostly the same since it was less than half a month in between my 2 viewings. I'd say I honestly enjoyed it slightly more this time though, just having seen it in the theater, still a solid 9 out of 10. I thought I should watch this movie right after hearing about a movie known as The 41-Year-Old Virgin, who knocked up Sarah Marshall and felt super bad about it. I had seen 2 of the movies it was referencing in that bizarre-ass title, that being 40-Year-Old Virgin and Superbad, but it looked like such complete shit that I thought I might as well watch Sarah Marshall and Knocked Up this month to prepare myself for that steaming load of ass. I did actually like this film though. It was really funny and managed to tell a great story. I thought that the acting was great, and they're all hilarious in their roles. The message was meaningful and very relatable, and all in all, forgetting Sarah Marshall just turned out to be a good bit of fun. 8 out of 10. This might be a pretty unpopular opinion, but I really did like this one. It's probably my 3rd favorite Apatow-esque film, being Superbad as my favorite, then 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, and then Sarah Marshall. The love story feels so simple and pure in this one. These 2 pretty normal people accidentally get pregnant, and they have to work through how they're gonna continue this relationship. By the end, I think they did a great job of telling this rom-com through this awkward circumstance. Seth Rogen is always hilarious, and so is everyone else, even Paul Rudd, who I heard many people say isn't that funny most of the time. Knocked Up, just like Sarah Marshall, is a fun movie that I would love to revisit whenever I get the chance. 8 out of 10. Wow, what a beautiful film. This is the highest ranking out of any movie on IMDb, and though I find other films better, I can see why this is generally agreed as the best. It's really fucking good. It's not the fastest, most action-packed movie of all time, far from it, but that ain't the kind of movie this is. You have to be in the mood for watching this one, and once you are, it's fantastic. It really shows how brutal our prisons are, and especially for someone who didn't even commit the crime he's being prosecuted for. Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman are absolutely brilliant in this film. They really bring their all to their roles, and I can see how this movie would be significantly worse without their prowess. It's fucking heartbreaking every single time Andy gets sent to the hole, and the movie really makes you feel the drawn-out passage of time. I've seen the prison escape at the end of the movie parodied 100 times before now, including in the Hangover Part 3, but I never knew it was from this film until now, and it hit so fucking hard. What an incredible ending. The entire resolution was also insanely good, as it follows Morgan Freeman discovering letters from Andy and meeting up with him in Mexico. 9 out of 10, really fucking good movie. Alright, I talked about this movie for quite a while in my March video, so I'll try to just highlight some of my favorite parts here. Cinematography is a clear standout, and so is the score, visual effects, acting, writing, basically everything was really fucking well done, and made for an awesome experience. The time flew by like it was nothing, and the enormous sense of scale proved to make this epic even better. Austin Butler was the best actor in the movie, and the Harkonnen planet was awe-inspiring as hell to look at. Great fucking movie, 9 out of 10. Civil War was a really interesting look at this dystopian future ruled by the media. I'm not the first person to say it, but this shit was brutal. If there's one thing this movie excels in, it's putting you right on the edge of your seat and never taking a step back. I was nervous as hell the entire time, and fucking especially at the Jesse Plemons scene, like damn! From the trailers, I definitely thought this would be an entirely different movie from what it turned out to be, but it wasn't bad. I still enjoyed it and honestly felt like a different person walking out of that theater. The cinematography was interesting, definitely different, but it wasn't incredible or anything. I liked the score and random assortment of music. I thought it was so wildly different from the movie that it kinda worked in an odd way. Not my favorite movie, but enjoyable nonetheless. 7 out of 10. Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. I was genuinely quite interested in this concept back when it came out, but never got around to checking it out. Since the sequel just came out, I thought, you know, what the hell? Bro, this movie is so shit. It was painful watching this, and I wanted it to be good. It's such a blatant, horribly boring, bleak, uninteresting ripoff of Star Wars, and yeah, I knew it would basically be Star Wars, sure, but I thought a new take could be interesting. Fuck nah! No, it wasn't! Watching this made me feel like each second of the film was being extracted from my life. They directly copied so many scenes from so many other, different, far better movies that I couldn't help it but want to watch those movies instead. I mean, the hippogriff scene from Harry Potter is just inserted into this shit. And what the f was the deal with that robot guy? He was being built up at the start and then just fucked off. I actually really fucking hated this movie, but knowing my dumbass, I'll probably watch the second one next month because f my life, I guess. 3 out of 10. I read this book like 2.5 years ago, so I didn't remember shit aside from the end of the story because I did a project on it for school. But anyways, it was pretty interesting. I mean, I absolutely love seeing this take on the future put to screen, but I feel like I remember the book being significantly better. I don't know, the movie was just kinda slow and not as impactful as its predecessor. It's quite difficult for me to express how I feel about this, other than it was just alright and didn't keep my interest. 5 out of 10. Alright, yes, now this shit rules. I had always wanted to see this film and started watching it at like 10 p.m, fully expecting to fall asleep, but I didn't. I couldn't. My eyes and ears were glued to the screen, and though I'm not much of a musician myself, I've always been able to really appreciate music, and this was just a new experience. I love it in movies when the main character does something wrong that makes the audience see them as kind of an asshole, only to watch them grow again. I honestly think it makes them so much more relatable, because we all make mistakes. I mean, Andrew is a total dick for a large portion of that film, but you still care for him and you want him to succeed. I can't believe I've gone this long without mentioning J.K. Simmons, because this is the best f***ing role I've ever seen him in. Such a talented actor, man. I have always been at odds with my old cross-country coach, but after seeing this film, I emailed him that same night to set everything straight between us. This movie just really spoke to me in some incredibly unexpected ways. Seriously, go watch this if you haven't. 9 out of 10. Similarly to Fahrenheit 451, I've also read this book and decided to give the film a watch. Also similarly, the book was better, but this film was more interesting than Fahrenheit's film. Most of what I pictured in my head for that book is exactly what I saw on the screen, which is really shocking. Other than that, the movie didn't add all that much. It definitely was cool to see all that visually, but not the most incredible thing I've ever seen. 6 out of 10. I am so incredibly conflicted about this season. The first half was so fucking good, and it was looking like it would be even better than season 1. But the second half kind of lost me a little. Maybe I was expecting too much, but it got a little worse. Also, Shrinking Ray and Duplicate should have stayed dead. Not because I hate them or anything, but this shit is significantly less impactful when they're just still alive at the end all of a sudden. Anyways, rant aside, it was still really good. Mark himself is a far more developed and mature character than in season 1. He feels like a real superhero with real responsibilities now that Nolan is gone. Amber too. She's a much better character all around, and it's a very welcome change. Oliver's entry into this series is weird as but really interesting. I'm excited to see where this show will go next, but I just can't help but think about the fact that it'll be fucking years until the next season. I really do think it comes down to the fact that I was expecting it to be just as good as season 1, if not better, but maybe that was unrealistic. I hate to be talking so many negatives about a show I really do like. Let's just hope season 3 comes in a reasonable amount of time. First half of season 2, really good. Second half, a little disappointing. 8 out of 10 all around. I knew I'd like this film, and I really did. Watching Civil War earlier this month kind of inspired me to finally get around to this one, and they do have some really similar elements. Jake Gyllenhaal is fucking great here, giving me the same vibes as Joaquin Phoenix from Joker. Their complete disregard for human life to achieve their goals paints them in this horrific light and makes you nervous anytime they're on screen. I haven't seen Gyllenhaal in anything besides this and Far From Home, but I thought he was really good here, and I'm shocked he isn't cast in more shit. This was definitely a really fun and interesting watch. 8 out of 10. Alrighty, wrapping up this show with a bizarre as hell final season. The third season was definitely better than the first two, but I'd have to say this was just a little worse than season 3. I'm sure most will agree that this season kind of jumped the shark, and that's a really odd thing to say about a show as crazy as Kimmy. I do think the insanity works well in the show though, and I think it's what made the third season a bit better, just embracing the fact that this shit is bonkers as hell. Most of the characters eventually saw the change that they were in desperate need of since the start of the show, which is really good. I'm glad they picked up on some of those mistakes eventually. There's an episode in season 4 where we see our main characters' lives play out if one or two small things were different, similar to the plot of Sliding Doors, a movie that I need to watch, but that episode might have been my favorite in the entire show. It's just an interesting premise that was probably only thought up to increase the season's episode count, but whatever. It was very reminiscent of an episode of Community or something, which is an automatic gold star. Anyways, the season wasn't great or anything, but still pretty enjoyable. 7 out of 10. I decided to end this month with one of my all-time favorite movies. Fucking love every detail of this film, and I love how I notice new shit every time I watch it. There are so many little Easter eggs scattered plentifully throughout this masterpiece of a film, to the point where I could watch it over and over, never getting bored. Doc and Marty are one of the best duos ever put to screen, and their powerful friendship is unyielding across time. The score is so incredibly iconic, but to be honest, what isn't iconic about this film? It's not just a time travel movie either. It's a story about a boy learning to appreciate where his family came from and how his parents met, even though his mom totally would have got with him if it were up to her. Power of Love, Back in Time, Earth Angel, Johnny Be Good, all absolute bangers, and all are used perfectly. The entire opening sequence is classic as hell and perfectly sets the stage for the events of the movie. We are introduced to the fact that Doc is a very technology and time-oriented scientist who might just be a little crazy and stole a bunch of plutonium within one shot of the movie. A little later on, we're also shown how the clock tower was struck by lightning 30 years prior. Also, just the very fact that Biff treats George like the shit on the bottom of his shoe, it all comes back. Everything seen in the movie is set up before Marty even goes back in time. I should mention that this and the next film end on such an exciting note that makes you want to watch the next one immediately afterwards. Believe it or not, that's exactly what I did, but you'll have to wait until the May video to see that. Back to the Future is a 10 out of 10 movie, seriously one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. Bada bing, bada boom. That was 31 movies and 2 seasons of television in the month of April. I didn't watch nearly as much shit this month as previous months, but hey, I still got one a day. I'll have plenty more movies next month, but until then, I really hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you have a sextastic rest of your day. Peace.